should be live on YouTube. Facebook should pick up in a second here. Phil, let me know that the Facebook is live. I don't want to
We
screw
are
anybody
live
over.
on YouTube.
We are live on
And
YouTube. All right. And I'm on our live page now.
we are live on Facebook. Go for it. Take it
We're
away.
live on Facebook. Oh, baby. Wait, why can't I see it on Facebook? Whatever. Never mind. What's up, everybody? Pretty excited tonight. We have it's been a while. I know, you guys. We've been doing a lot of classes, so it's been a while. But we're really excited for tonight because we have Reed Walker, and there are a couple delightful things about Reed Walker. One, we just did a Tiki series, Cotton and Reed. The last class is tomorrow night, and so the recommended rum for the last 3 or 4 weeks has been Cotton and Reed. So it's just a blast to have Reed of Cotton and Reed here. So Reed, before I like really bring you in, I just want to, you guys know the rest of our team. Phil, you probably can't see Phil right now. But Phil is our technical expert here, and will be in the weeds, monitoring questions, giving us trouble, and then of course we have our the master mixologist himself from the last 4 weeks, Sammy. And Reed, I haven't seen your face in a while, and you have Phil's beard and Sammy's hair dyed blonde, which is really impressive.
These are my heroes right here, Phil and Sammy.
But hey, man, it's great to see you. Welcome on the show, and thanks for joining us.
Hell yeah! Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's dive right in. I'm excited because most of the time we talk about whiskey, and whiskey is something I'm really comfortable with. And tonight we're talking about rum, which is something I don't know nearly as much about. And so I'm like digging into rum. I've been doing research and trying to get prepared for tonight's interview. And one of the things that Sammy had me do was look through some of the most influential rums over the last 20 years, and then he sent me back even over the last decade. And before I start sort of talking to you guys about it, the one that's been super influential for me and was one of the sort of original rums that sparked my interest was Privateer, which is obviously up here. You're down in DC, Reed, and I know you know Maggie, but up here, Privateer is like, it's kind of the only distillery that I love visiting up here and going nuts over. And when the first time I went up there and did sort of the whole shindig, the whole tour, the first thing they had us do was a sugar tasting. And for me, pre my education, I thought that sugar was just sugar. Sorry, everyone. I didn't know. And it was really cool to sort of to get deep into that. And then, Sammy sort of was like, hey man, like sugar, the provenance, the way you process it, where it's from, how it's used is as important to rum as, say, the mash bill is to bourbon. And I really, tasting through the sugars, I really got that. And so that's a really long-winded setup, Reed, to ask you, you have a really crystal clear understanding of sugar. You've explained it to me like 12 times. I still probably don't really get it all the way. But I'm so fascinated about how and why you picked the sugar that you guys use for Cotton and Reed.
Yeah, I mean, I might even go as far as disagreeing with the statement that this sugar choice has a similar impact as the mash bill. I would say the sugar choice has more. In whiskey, we know that 60 to 80% of the flavor of a whiskey comes from the barrel. I would say, so that only leaves, a little bit for what the mash bill is. For rum, I would say that 60 to 80% of the flavor of the rum comes from your sugar source. So what you choose for your sugar may actually have a larger impact on the final rum flavor than the mash bill that you pick in whiskey. So as a rum distillery, your choice of sugar source is incredibly important. And there's huge variation in both the source of sugar and in the way that it's processed. So as a rum distiller, you have immense flexibility in what you want your final product to taste like. So for us, we took inspiration from our favorite styles of rum in the world. Let's get nerdy on sugar for a second here. So sugar is a grass. It grows tall, 10 to 14 feet tall, depending on where you are. And the sugarcane plant is incredibly nutritious. There are a lot of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, water, and of course sugar in the sugarcane plant. And like any crop, terroir matters. So the soil you grow it in, the rainfall that year, the flood patterns that year, of course, the sun, the heat, all these things will greatly impact the flavor. Plus, the sugar industry as a commodity, there's been a lot of homogenization, just like you see in the corn industry, where GMOs dominate because farmers want high crop yield. So for crop yield, they're optimizing for quantity of sugar per acre. And so taste really isn't a priority for many farmers. So that then becomes a sourcing challenge for distilleries who actually care about flavor. And so once globally, sugarcane is grown and cut down either mechanically or manually. Manual harvesting, there are immense human rights issues with the harvesting practices. You may have heard of the Flor de Caña issues, the rum from Nicaragua a few years back, and bartenders around the country were pouring Flor de Caña down the drain in protest of the horrific labor practices of harvesting that cane. So we've chosen to source our sugarcane from Louisiana and soon enough Costa Rica, where there is all mechanical harvesting and people are properly paid. So that sugarcane plant is then sent to a sugar mill. A sugar mill, imagine like an old steampunk factory, like rusted gears, loud whistles, people yelling. It's very boisterous, a lot of energy, size of a city block in New York City, huge factories. And the sugarcane plant is crushed, and the juice comes out, and that juice has all of the nutrients, all the minerals, all the vitamins. And that juice can be used by some distilleries, largely French inspired or French, previously French colonies use that fresh cane juice to create their rum. So there's a lot of flavor because they're using that fresh juice. So think Martinique, Guadeloupe, Haiti. They all use fresh cane juice. Cachaça in Brazil uses fresh cane juice. But the rest of the world is not really focused on creating rum with the fresh cane juice. They're interested in creating sugar. So that sugar is processed from the cane juice. So the cane juice goes into a huge boiler, a pressurized boiler, where sugar crystals start to form. And think about like deep, dark, black crystals. And then that's sent to a centrifuge, and the centrifuge spins off raw sugar, think like sugar in the raw at the coffee table, and molasses. And the raw sugar is the commodity of value. That's what the sugar industry cares about. That's the valued product. Then the molasses, believe it or not, the number one consumer of molasses in America is cows. So most molasses is used as cattle feed because, as I said earlier, there's a lot of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in the sugarcane plant. And if you remove all of the sugar, or not all the sugar, if you remove a lot of the sugar, what's left behind is this thick, dark, very nutritious molasses. So most of the world uses this waste product, this cattle feed, as the stock for their rum because it's cheap. It's very, very, very inexpensive. So if you're looking at British styles of rum, like from Barbados or Jamaica, they're using largely blackstrap molasses, or Spanish, historically Spanish places such as Central America or Puerto Rico. They're all using molasses. So now these origins, what I've been saying with the French, British, and Spanish styles, I mean, all this goes back to the 1700s. And you fast forward to today, and, you know, traditions don't die generally. And so there's a lot of people stick with tradition. So for us, we have some more flexibility. Being an American distillery, there's not as much tradition associated with the American style of rum. So we got to pick and choose. We got to pick what style of molasses, what source of molasses. Where we didn't get to choose, though, is we cannot use fresh cane juice because we're based in Washington, D.C. And if you shipped fresh cane juice from Louisiana, by the time it would get to DC, it would have already have spontaneously fermented. So we have to use molasses, but we can use different grades of molasses, really clean molasses and a really dirty, funky molasses. So we use 75% grade A molasses and 25% dirty, funky, nasty blackstrap molasses.
So what was the so I mean, the first question I think that most people would have is like, why include the 25% blackstrap, right? Like you guys obviously aren't cutting costs with your molasses selection. So why the 25% at all to begin with?
That's where all the flavor comes from.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you want that contribution, but a lot of American rums are sourcing from a sugar mill in Louisiana, Lula Westfield, and they're great. And they sell blackstrap molasses, which is great. It's very dirty, and so the yeast struggle to ferment that particular molasses. And so some distilleries will add raw sugar to make it easier for the yeast to thrive and properly ferment. So for us, we source a pre-blended molasses, and you know, we did a bunch of experimentation, but we found that we wanted just a little bit of that black strappy funk, but we wanted a clean rum. So our white rum is very sippable. You get none of that burn. You get none of that side tongue tingliness that you get with a lot of spirits. And that's because we have a very, very, very clean fermentation. And that's because only 25% of the blend is blackstrap. But of course, we wanted the flavor. So
Lonnie over at Boston Shaker's obsessed with it. It's like he teaches all his daiquiri classes, and I'm actually drinking a Cotton and Reed Cantaloupe daiquiri, a la Sammy, who taught me how to make it. And it has the white rum has a minerality to it that just like I don't know if minerality, it texturizes as if it has minerality, and it really is pretty delightful. I'm really interested because, like, as an American rum distillery, you have a lot of freedom. Actually, you have a lot of freedom to sort of decide from a stylistic standpoint, you know, what you want to do. And obviously you spent a lot of time tasting a lot of rums and looking at a bunch of rums that were already on the market that come from all the different places. And that sort of leads me to my kind of favorite question of the night that I really wanted to start a conversation between you and Sammy on is really the big influences. Who influenced you guys? Which distilleries do you think have made a really big impact on rum and where it is today, and how has that sort of influenced the decisions you were making in everything, in everything production wise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, boy, where to start? I guess I'll start from the beginning of my rum journey. So I've always been a Scotch guy. I love big, bold flavors. I like high ester content. I like big flavor. And early in my drinking career, I wasn't exposed to premium rum. I wasn't exposed to things other than, Bacardi and Captain Morgan, which together comprise, if I remember correctly, almost 80% of the US market for rum. It's insane. So the first premium rum that I was exposed to, he actually ended up becoming one of our investors. My former boss, when I was working as a strategy consultant for NASA in the space industry, we went out to dinner, got drunk, went to get after dinner drinks. He's like, "Hey, I've got a really awesome bourbon for you to taste." And I'm like, I'm more of a Scotch guy. He's like, let me taste you on it. And, the waiter comes around and I taste him. Like, oh shit, this is so good. What is it? Turns out he was tricking me. It was Ranza Capa 23. So it's a rum from Guatemala. It is not aged for 23 years. I've since learned what the Solera process means. It means that a very small fraction of that rum was aged 23 years. It's also a sweetened rum. So post distillation and aging, they will add sugar to it. If I remember correctly, they add roughly 40 grams of sugar per liter. So quite a bit of sugar. And it's sweet, similar to the way that bourbon is sweet. Not that bourbon is post sweetened, but perception means a lot. And so from a novice standpoint, the Ranza Capa 23 could trick a bourbon drinker. It's also aged in ex-bourbon casks for a large period of time. So that was the beginning of, okay, shit, maybe I should take rum seriously. Let's start looking at rums. Let's start looking at unsweetened rums that are made in a different style. So Guatemalan rum is obviously Spanish style of rum. So many Spanish style rums are sweetened. Some people think that's bad. I personally think it's a stylistic preference. So I wouldn't necessarily say good or bad, but everything in moderation. It's like adding salt to a steak. You want to add some salt, or you could add some salt. Adding too much would suck. So then I dove down into the deep, dark, beautiful world of premium rums globally. And boy, is it fun, and way, way, way more flavor diversity than you'll get in bourbon. And so, yeah, some of my big influences, I mean, right off the bat, Ray and Nephew. I mean, wow, that's like, it's a pinnacle of rum right there. It's like, so Ray Nephew is a Jamaican style of rum. It's overproof. It would be a great Malakoff cocktail if that's what you wanted to do. But it'll burn your face. It's just like, it's got everything. It's got alcohol, it's got esters, it's got funk, it's got so you don't want to use Ray and Nephew in everything that you do in rum. It is overpowering. In a lot of tiki cocktails, you'll just add a fraction of an ounce of a Ray and Nephew just to give it some ester pop. But for us, when we were creating our rum, we wanted that funky, Jamaica-y, fruity pop. So by fruity, I mean during the fermentation process, naturally fruity esters are created. So to get nerdy real quick, butyric acid is a common acid that's created during fermentation as the yeast is eating sugar and it creates this acid, and it's nasty. It smells like vomit.
Sammy on cue.
Yeah. As it's distilled in the heat and the pressure of the still, that acid combines with ethanol, alcohol, to create ethyl butyrate. Am I saying that right? Ethyl butyrol, ethyl butyrate, which is an ester that smells and tastes like pineapples. And it's just naturally occurring. And if you are good at fermentation, you can strategically create esters that taste like fruits. And we loved the Rhea Nephew profile, very banana-y, little coconut-y, little pineapple-y. And so we use a, believe it or not, a Chenin Blanc yeast strain from the Loire Valley at a super high temperature with our molasses to extract these really traditionally British Jamaican fruity esters. What are some of your other favorite rums? Do you want to take a go, Sammy?
I was really curious because Sammy, one of the first rums that Sammy was like, get your shit together and learn about this rum was Rhea Nephew. And Sammy, you have a bartender background, and I know Rhea Nephew is just super important and has some influence. So I'm curious your thoughts on Rhea Nephew.
I remember the first time I had Rhea Nephew was at Number 9 Park. And I remember that it was shown to me. First of all, they gave it to me as a shot. They weren't nice enough to put it in a cocktail for me. They didn't use a fraction of an ounce. They said, yo, dude, we got this. You should try it. And actually, the person who bought the shot for me was Kofi Thomas, who was then a salesperson for Privateer Rum, who knew his shit. And it was the kind of guy that showed me that rum was not something sickly sweet to be mixed with Coke. We all had that rum that showed us it was legit, that unlocked something in our mind. Maybe the Rhea Nephew was a little too strong for me to have learned that lesson at that moment. But I think the most influential rums for me come in two categories. They're the rums that have changed, that they occupy a space in the minds of Americans that do a certain thing, like Gosling's Black Seal, and it's what the generation before that did with Myers Dark Rum. And then there's the more interesting side of it, where it's trying to recreate a rum we lost. Like, you can't make tiki drinks without, like a lot of tiki drinks without Lemon Heart 151 from Guyana. So it needed to be pieced together by Hamilton, and you can still get a couple of the bottles. They still come around. Ditto with Smith & Cross was a recreation developed by David Wondrick and Gaz Regan, all these really awesome cocktail geniuses and historians. Plantation, OFTD, similar story. But I think the rum that I put on the list that Nick already would have known about was Foursquare, because in a lot of ways, Foursquare legitimized sipping rum for a lot of whiskey drinkers. And I think that's the kind of rum that rises the tide for all ships. And it's the way that they get you into it. I know as someone who has drunk a lot of white rums, from like Havana Club to old school Bacardi and like Neeson's, all the cool agricole stuff. What I like about your white rum is that it tastes like an agricultural product, which is maybe not an obvious thing to think about, but as you said, it is a grass. And I've had a lot of rums that could have been vodka, that they were so stripped of their character. And I think, Americans are still a little bit behind on rum. And I think your rum is the perfect thing to pour for someone who is interested in learning about what rum can be without challenging them too much with esters, like Dunder Pitt's Jamaican thing,
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, the white rum, like for me, Cotton and Reed white rum will always go down as one of the big influential rums in my experience with rum. The white rum in particular, I'm allspice dram obsessed. I put that shit in everything. I'm like the grandma from the Frank's commercials. I put that shit on everything. Like I'm all about the allspice dram. It's like it's just a staple for it's a wintertime staple. Like it's dropped a few degrees up here in Boston, and I'm already thinking about it. Like the stores are starting to sell pumpkin stuff, and like I'm already starting to think about it. It's starting. But I just distinctly remember when Zach came to me and was like, "Hey, I found this company through long story, but like you've got to try it." And I was like, "It's rum." Like the only rum that I know of. Interesting that Sammy brought it up. Yeah, I was like, the only rum I really know of that I like care about is Foursquare, and that's like a classic whiskey drinkers. You know, you go do a tasting at Norfolk or Julio's, and they're just like, rum, rum, rum. And then what's his name? What is it? Richard Seeley. I'm so bad with names. Sammy, help me for the love of God. The founder of.
This is too much fun.
Anyway, he shows up to do a tasting, and like every whiskey drinker is, you know, shitting their pants to get in there and get a bottle signed. And so I just was like, a white spirit? Like, I don't drink white spirits. There's like a reason I don't like vodka. And to your point, Sammy, it was just like, rum. And then I tasted this and was like, oh wow, it has minerality, it has flavor, it's well made. There's no like, I don't need to just shoot this. And for like 3 weeks, all I drank was like cotton and reed on the rocks.
I remember those 3 weeks actually. When I first started working with you. Every night I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Nick?" He's like, "Hey man, I just had 3 shots of your white rum." I'm like, "Fuck yeah." You're like,
yeah.
Bottle 6. It's like,
I love it.
So good.
No, but it and that actually helped me. Get into cocktails. And I remember like Sammy trying to teach me how to literally peel a lemon.
Did you cut your cuticle the first time?
I didn't cut my cuticle. I actually cut hilariously my middle finger. And it's like the only scar I have on my hands. It was the first night of lessons with Sammy on making cocktails. But it's really funny because I always sort of felt like drinking cocktails and drinking rum was going backwards from whiskey. Like I was such an arrogant Scotch drinker. I was like, I arrived at the pinnacle before anybody else. You know what I mean? I was like 22 drinking Scotch. I thought I was the coolest person in the world.
There's so many different forms of art. So yeah, you just gotta find the art that you appreciate.
Yeah, so for me it was awesome, and it just got me into a totally different world.
Mm-hmm.
This actually leads into a question I had for you, Reed, which is just, you know, how much of the Cotton Reed rum portfolio is informed by what you know will be successful in bars, like that you know your favorite bartenders will make with their favorite drinks, and how much of it is meant to be innovative and trend-setting and maybe push some boundaries for a few folks, rum drinkers, whiskey drinkers, anybody else out there?
Yeah, I mean, way to hit the nail on the head there with like our internal strategic discussions. Yeah, from the beginning, it was like, okay, how do we want to define this? Like, what do we want to be inspired by? Which kind of rums do we want to make? Like, what's our goal? Yeah, and it's been a concerted effort since 2013 when Jordan Cotton and I put our heads together and we're like, okay, we're starting a rum distillery. And it's tough because people don't really know about rum. And so you can't get them interested in rum until they taste a rum that they like. So you have this like minimum, like it's got to taste a certain amount of good to a traditional drinker that they're excited to even have a second sip. So that was sort of the baseline. But then we discovered that because rum is so new to a lot of people, that there's a lot of opportunity to communicate why something is good. And once you have some airtime to describe why something is good, then you have more flexibility to create something that you think is good. So we started with a hypothesis that there are many great rums, and there isn't a great rum that properly balances French, British, and Spanish influences. So we wanted our white rum to be able to be a jack of all trades in that sense. And so we worked very hard over many, many years. And, you know, this white rum is batch 31. I don't think we landed on our current recipe until batch like 20. So if you have a pre-20 batch, you'll notice that it tastes very different. And all of them taste very different up until that point, because we couldn't figure out how to make what we deemed to be the perfect blend. And of course, we never reach perfection, but we finally found a recipe that we are very proud of. And so I think the strategy was more about creating what we thought was the perfect rum, and then having the opportunity to communicate why it's good, why it's unique, and why it's special. But then, I mean, you
20. I was hoping I did.
What's your oldest one?
My oldest one is like 25. I have 27 is probably what I have. It's in the other room. I was like, shit, I think I might have one. I was going to do a side by side.
No, they're different. I mean,
Okay.
One of my favorite quotes from the world of beer is, "It's easy to make beer. It's hard to make good beer. It's impossible to make consistent beer." And turns out that's true for spirits as well. And so we've been striving for, since batch 21, we've been striving for consistency. And it's very, very, very hard to tell the difference between our batches now. We've gotten very good at the consistency equation. But part of that is there's a benefit to focus. And our focus from the beginning is to become the best American rum distillery, or I should say among the best, because rum is a very collaborative world. Well, yeah, when you focus, it's easier to get better. So a lot of craft distilleries will make gin and vodka and whiskey. And so we really only make rum. And at the end of the day, we really only make one rum, which is our white rum. And then this white rum is used as the base to make everything else, from our spice products to some of our barrel rested and barrel aged products.
I mean, you've had a lot of success with creating a portfolio that touches a lot of different notes. I'm curious to hear if you've had any just disasters, like just bad experiments, ideas that you thought would be great, and then they just like,
what's the worst one?
What have you done?
The worst experiment. Oh man. So
nobody ever sees this side, right? Like every time somebody releases a product, they don't realize that it's like, I remember talking to David Perkins when he first was making the campfire for High West, and he was I was talking to him, and he was a little drunk, which is like the best time to talk to an owner or a distiller always. And I asked him how many iterations of campfire, High West campfire they did. And he said, we did 400 iterations before I could drink the stuff.
Wow.
So like I'm so curious about this answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many mistakes over the years, and we're a small business. You know, a large portion of craft distilleries are founded by old rich white dudes that have cash reserves. We don't have cash reserves. We're young white dudes. Not that that's that big of a difference in the grand scheme of things, but like, you know, we only had so much money. And actually, when we started, when we finally opened our doors, we had $14,000 left in the bank account. We had maxed out our line of credit. We had maxed out 4 personal credit cards. There was just no money. Like if we made mistakes, there was no room for a mess up, because we would be out of business by week 2 of operating after spending 3 years trying to get the damn place open. So that put us in a really tough spot that there wasn't really an opportunity to fail. Like if you had a bad batch, you couldn't not sell it because we didn't have the money to not sell it. So one of my philosophies on running a small business has become constraints drive creativity. And, our constraint when we started was lack of financial resources. So whenever there was a mistake, we needed, if the company were to survive, we needed to figure out a way to get it in a bottle. And so that required a lot of creative thinking, a lot of late nights. And so my favorite was I think it was probably like 6 or 7 months into operating, and we were on batch, whatever, 6 or 7 at that point. And we had ran out of product. And so we needed to bottle that night. And so we were doing our spirits run. It's a 12-hour spirits run. So I was going to finish distilling at like 9 or 10 p.m. Then I needed to clean the still, and then I needed a bottle. And the rum came out of the still, and it tasted fucking horrible. Just like all sorts of bad notes. Like, I wish I had the palate then that I do now, because then I would have been able to.
How bad it is.
Oh, I know exactly what fermentation issues happened there. I know exactly what issues we did in the distillation, and then it was like, and we would have solved the problem, and we would have been good. Also, we would have had the foresight to not need to bottle the night that you distill the damn product. But we had to bottle it. So I was like, so in my like lack of sleep haziness, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to distill it again. So I didn't have any help. There's nobody to run ideas by. I was by myself. It's like almost midnight at this point in the distillery. And I just like, I guess I'm distilling this again. I had no other options. It was either bottle something bad or distill it and pray to God that it turned into something that wasn't complete shit. So anyway, I redistilled it. If there's any distillers listening to this, you know that certainly does not solve all your problems. It can solve some of them. But, flaws in the fermentation will result in flaws in your final product. So anyway, there was a few really bad batches in the beginning. Long story short.
I'm impressed. I thought you were going to tell us about, bad experiments that didn't end up in the bottle.
This is small business ownership,
Small business ownership.
Yep. So unfortunately, that hurts us as a small business, because then people taste it, and with craft spirits, you only get one shot. So there were hundreds of people who probably tasted that batch that never gave us a second shot. So what I always tell people when they taste, a lot of people will complain about a craft spirits distillery and like, their product doesn't taste very good. I always say, that's fine. Probably didn't taste very good. Please try them again 1 year from now. Just give them a second shot. It's always worth giving a craft distillery a second shot, because you never know what hardships they had getting that product in a bottle. And the industry is so new that everyone's getting better every day.
I actually, it's funny you say that. I know Zach is in the Facebook chat right now, just chatting away. And I think he'll remember this. We had a meeting, almost like 4 years ago, with somebody at Westland, and they were talking about Westland, and they were like, Westland's good right now, but just like, oh God, I can't wait for you to taste them in 3 years. Mm-hmm. And there is
a good perspective.
Yeah, and there's a like, Westland's not like this small little distillery anymore. Like Westland, it was already on the rise, and yet there was still this statement of like, this shit's only going to get better. And it's interesting because you guys put the batch on the bottle. Most places don't put the batch on the bottle. You don't always know that you're getting, you could walk into, Joe Schmo's Liquors and pick up a bottle of Westland that's been there for 5 years. You don't know that you're going to get something different. so it's pretty fascinating to understand that process. And I think it's important to understand that like there's a lot of sort of development around this. I want to take us. I want a full 20-minute. Usually we do the white lightning round in like 10 minutes, and I want to take us to the white lightning round right meow, because
Right meow.
right
I don't
meow.
know what the white lightning round is. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, so we're gonna hit you with some questions. Usually they're a little rapid fire, but usually we don't know the person so well. Like and to be clear, we did some digging on this. We did a little mischief. So I'm
Should I get
gonna
another drink?
yeah, go ahead, pour yourself something.
This is our new product that we're releasing Labor Day weekend. Our
Oh,
PX
baby.
Dark Rum.
Right on.
Batch number 1. First sip.
Can't wait to try that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm drinking the OG. I'm drinking the sherry cask strength single barrel Navy strength that came out however many, like a year ago or so, that is just absolutely scrumptious. All right, are you ready, Reed?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. So you guys, you and Jordan, leave NASA, and the first thing you made was not rum. It was apple brandy and rye whiskey. What drew you guys to those spirits specifically? Like, why there? Why'd you start there?
We've always been interested in underappreciated spirits categories. So the first time that we went to Ace Hardware, we spent $50. We built our own still.
Wait, sorry? It cost you $50 to build your own still going to Ace Hardware?
Yes.
Phil, can you put up a statement that says don't try this at home, like immediately?
Hey, I'm an engineer.
Apparently.
Safety first.
How much does the space shuttle costs? Just be honest.
Excuse me?
How much does the space shuttle cost at NASA?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 150, 200?
Yeah. $1 million. And Jordan's and my experience in college was, well, for me, I made prison wine, and Jordan made mead in college. And that was kind of what we're like, hey, let's do something cool with alcohol. And we're like, everybody's doing this boring beer thing. Let's distill. That'd be cool. So we were both pretty into Calvados at the time. And we're like, let's buy some Gala apples in the closest grocery store's Whole Foods, and we'll just see what happens. So yeah, we pressed some apples from Whole Foods, and yeah, did a little fermentation. Again, I wish I had the palate then that I do now, because I remember it tasting very good, but I doubt it did. Yeah, we did a single distillation on a pot still, and I doubt it got above 60% alcohol. Fruit brandies have a lot of methanol that naturally occurs during fermentation. So the cuts that we made, I have no idea. Did we make good cuts? I don't know.
You're not blind.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that there was methanol, so we didn't drink the pure methanol, but you know, it also only made like this much. It was like, you know, four ounces of brandy, and we put in some wood chips, and it was cool. Not very nerdy, just like very moonshiny.
And what about the rye? Like, why were you were just making rye because you thought it was just underserved? And how did it turn out?
Back in 2014, that was very
popular
early in the rye curve. Yeah. So yeah, we were very excited about rye. Sazerac was probably my favorite cocktail during that period of my life. So I was pretty interested in just seeing what we could do with rye. And if I remember correctly, I think we were using 100% rye mash bill, which is like really hard to do.
Yeah, you don't have the enzymes you need from the barley. Were
Yeah.
you
So
using were you adding enzymes? I imagine no.
I don't know, man. I have no idea. It was so long ago.
You guys were so drunk off of the apple brandy that you're seeing stars because you're on a methanol kick.
No, I remember Jordan and I, it was in his basement at that time. And we were like, while we were just waiting around, we were watching like really stupid, like, we were on like a cartoon kick at that point. I forget what, we were watching like Dragon Ball Z or something.
All right. That brings me to my next question, because it only gets more fun from here. So, what are the logistics you have to be aware of to build a distillery on Mars? And what would be the first Martian spirit if you were in charge?
So funny you should ask. So I'm on the board of directors of an organization, nonprofit organization called Alcohol in Space, and I endeavor to be the first owner of a bar and distillery in space. So I am well acquainted with this question. So what's really cool about humanity and our history of exploration is whenever humans go to new territories, we always find whatever happens to be growing. So for example, like in the Caribbean, obviously rum is the spirit of choice because that's where sugarcane grows. And in America, bourbon is the spirit of choice because we grow corn in America. In Mexico, it's tequila because they grow agave there. So we don't know what's going to take root in Mars.
Potatoes. I've seen Martian. Matt Damon knows.
Matt Damon, yeah. I mean, if it is potatoes, yeah. Well, potato vodka, hell yes, I'll be down. I suspect it'll be something way nerdier than that. There's certain forms of life that are certain types of fermentation that happen with bacteria. And I imagine that there'll be some sort of algae, that laboratory grown thing that, there's small scale fermentation that then you can do a distillation on.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Sammy?
Yeah.
I'm hearkening back to an old quote of Eisenhower's in the nascent stages of the space race, saying that the first meal that's going to be had in space is not going to be borscht, it's going to be frankfurters, it's going to be hot dogs.
Huh.
And I wonder if maybe rum is such an international spirit. Maybe it should be something that is not so such a source of a specific national pride. Like it shouldn't be like akavit or baijiu. Like it should be a little more.
It's a funny thing. So a lot of people, well, we all know that the Russian astronauts are drinking on the space station and they have their allotment. There's a wide perception that they're drinking vodka. It turns out that they're drinking cognac. Cognac is the spirit of choice on the International Space Station that I know of. Wow. I'm sure maybe the new crew likes something else, but historically speaking, the astronauts that the author of the book Alcohol in Space has said that that cognac is the spirit of choice.
Are you the author? Are you the pseudonym author?
No.
Like I was not expecting you to have such well-informed answers.
Cognac to Armagnac, is that difficult? Can we send a few Armagnac bottles of Domaine de Chiron to Russia?
Seriously, we will.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea at all.
I figure if you can only bring one bottle, you're not going to bring like a mediocre vodka. You're going to bring like the best cognac. I mean, what's better than the best cognac? I mean, nothing. So,
best Armagnac.
The best Armagnac. Yeah, I agree.
I guess.
Sammy, fire away. Get him to our classic.
I got it. Classic question. Everyone sees this coming. It's the distillery Armageddon on Earth. The reason why we're in Mars is because things went to hell back here on Earth. There are only 5 distilleries left on Earth. Okay. Mm-hmm. Bruce Willis is not here to sacrifice himself for the sake of Macallan, but fortunately, Reed Walker is there, and you can 5 distilleries, only 5. Which 5 do you save of any spirits?
So I think preserving variety is critical. So the number one most important thing for me, are we doing me or are we doing the world? Am I saving?
Dude, it's you. It's you. But there, you have to have a good reason. You can't just be like, I'm saving Cotton and Reed because fuck you guys.
No, Cotton and Reed is definitely not on the list. Actually, maybe it would be. Let me think about that one a little bit more. But I would start with an Italian Amaro.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I think that there's fewer things more perfect than a good Amaro. I would struggle between Braulio and Campari. I might pick Campari. I would definitely have to pick Chartreuse. The history of Chartreuse, it's vital. You can't lose Chartreuse, period. Yeah, so it's interesting that I picked 2 botanical spirits.
Yeah, seriously.
As my first 2. My third, I'm searching for the most versatile Scotch in my brain right now. Nick, you probably know better than me.
I mean, Scotch is like, I usually, when it's me, I usually save 4 Scotch distilleries because I like can't do without it. So it's really bad. I think I would have to save Springbank.
Springbank, okay.
Is my number 1. Just because they do everything old school.
Mm-hmm.
They make triple distilled, they make 2.8 distilled, and they make double distilled. So they make, like, you want to talk about versatility, they make unpeated triple distilled, they make heavily peated double distilled, and then they make medium peated just Springbank. And then of course their only computer there is a chalkboard. So I just like that they harken back to the old school. So Springbank is just like, if you're gonna save a Scotch distillery, it's not Glenlivet. It's not Macallan. Sorry, it's Springbank.
Yeah. All right. So Springbank, number 3. So yeah. So we got the Amaro and the whiskey category covered. I would not feel sad about losing vodka. Tequila, rum, and what's the other major category that I'm forgetting?
Brandy.
I mean, we don't have a brandy distillery saved, and we don't have a American whiskey or North American whiskey distillery saved.
Oh, we're forgetting about North American whiskey.
Whoa, that's fires.
Hey, we only get to save 5. So I think we need to save a tequila and then a rum.
All right. And which tequila and which rum?
What are we doing?
Yeah, which tequila? Ooh, man, I wish I knew.
Tequila better. Me too.
Yeah, what's that liquor store that we did that tasting at? Heritage, right next door to Heritage.
Oh my God, Sherborne Wine and Spirits.
Yeah, so we were talking to the owner of Sugar.
She knew everything.
Yeah, and there's one that starts with a CH.
Where's Phil? Phil knows tequila, and Phil, get your ass back in here.
Shanakuros or something like that. It's like.
Yeah, she was the one who introduced.
I'm trying to remember which one that is. Starts with a CH.
Yeah, she introduced you and me to it. I think she had already told you about it, and I fell in love with that tequila, and I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember it right now.
Is that
Chamiles?
Chamucos. That was it.
Oh, yep, Chamucos.
It's got the little devil on it. That's actually really good stuff too.
Yeah. So not the most expensive. Good bang for your buck. I fell in love with it.
One distillery left, brother, and it's
one
rum.
distillery left. God, I think it might have to be Ron Diplomatico.
Ooh,
Oh.
interesting.
Oh,
Interesting.
Yeah, the
Why?
master distiller there is Bomb. He's super familiar with all the different distillation processes. He is strategic on if and when to add sugar. The most favorite rum I've ever had is Ron Diplomatico. Or no, sorry. The Ambassador rum from Ron Diplomatico. I can't find it in America. I've asked so many distributors to get me that damn rum, but I'm working on starting a rum distillery in Costa Rica, and you can find it all over Costa Rica. And I think
driving you insane.
Yeah.
All right. We got two more for you.
Okay.
We dug deep here, and we discovered that you interned in post-production for Battlestar Galactica.
Yep, space nerd through and through.
Through and through. Unfortunately for you, Sammy and I are both fans. And so here's our hypothetical.
Frack you, Nick.
Yeah, we frack me indeed. And so hypothetically, you're Admiral you're Admiral Reed. What cocktail has ever been made for you in real life? Were it made with cotton and reed, would you just be like, this guy's a Cylon, I don't care what the population count is for the remaining humans, we're just putting him in like the vacuum, he's out, summarily executed via just.
So if I were the admiral, that means that none of my family would have made it. So that means none of them would know what my favorite cocktail would be. So that means if somebody knew what my favorite cocktail with cotton and reed was, then it would probably be a Cylon.
Oh, I like it.
Well
So I already finished my cocktail, but you may have noticed earlier when I was drinking, it had that beautiful red hue. So I was drinking a Negroni with our dry spiced rum, and then of course Campari and vermouth. So it was sub out the gin and replace it with our dry spiced rum.
Like it. All right, and our last question in the White Lightning round. Another apocalypse question. I don't know why the apocalypse is on my mind so much these days, but you, my friend, are a drummer, and I believe your cover band is Pop Rocks.
The Pop Rocks.
The Pop Rocks. Apologies.
Yeah.
Pop Rocks. It is a 90s rock music apocalypse. And the Pop Rocks are the only band left in the world that can play 90s music, but you can only keep the music for 5 songs.
Oh, man.
What are the 5 90s rock songs that you save for the sake of all of humanity?
Pop.
Well, whatever. Rock
Pop
songs. But you know what I'm talking about. You
Yeah.
and I have listened to so much of this shit together driving around Boston. I know you know what I'm talking about.
All right. So I guess it might be easy. Let's start with bands. Yeah, we got to have a Green Day from the Dookie album. When I Come Around, probably.
Yeah.
We got to have. So I'm in a pop punk cover band, so I'm
Right.
coming at it from a pop punk angle. So we got to have a Blink-182. What's my favorite? We do a really good cover of a bunch of their stuff. But I think What's My Age Again probably has to be on that list.
I just lost $20. I thought it was gonna be Damn It. I just got screwed out of that.
Damn
I
it.
was hoping it would be What's My Age again, because when Zach turned 23, I called him and played that fucking song on his birthday.
No, it's a fucking blast. It's just like, it's a great song. You can't not like that song. My favorite band to play drums to, weirdly, is Newfound Glory. There's all these like weird, cool syncopated fills that happen. You know, I have to do a Third Eye Blind song. We don't cover them very often, but you know, if we're talking 90s pop, you can't forget Third Eye Blind. I'd probably do, I don't know, right now I'm in the mood for Graduate. I don't know why. I'm like kind of in this like senioritis phase, like but you know, we'd probably have to do or maybe Jumper. I really like that song too. And then number 5, God, I would feel sad if we didn't do something like, I think we got to do like Backstreet Boys. I'm serious, like Backstreet's back, like just like definitive all-time Backstreet Boys. Like when it comes to boy bands, they're up there.
No doubt.
Oh my God.
How'd I do?
I'm delighted. I just got a text from somebody watching who showed up late, and they were like, this whole thing better be recorded because I want to see the rest of the conversation.
Oh man.
82.
82.
The Russians. They're great. It's not my grade. I'm sorry. They're drinking cognac. That's what they think. I'm sorry. You mind?
All right, I accept. It's fine.
It's there.
I protest. I'm the Americans. I protest. Oh man. Oh crap. All right, Phil, come in here for a second and give us any questions. I know we've got questions from people who are asking some interesting stuff here. What do we got?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a couple questions out there. Ryan Gilberti was asking what compounds make a dirty molasses dirty. I think it was something that was mentioned early on in the show while talking about grades of molasses.
Mm-hmm.
And what different flavors does that impart? Like a dirty molasses.
Yeah, great question. So ash is the number one dirty contributor to molasses. There's other things that make it more difficult to ferment, from metals to, you know, heavy concentrations of certain minerals that just like throw the balance out of whack. But ash is probably the primary contributor to the word dirty when it comes to the molasses. So ash inhibits the yeast's ability to ferment. And sometimes you actually want your yeast to struggle because the yeast will create different compounds. But in other situations, you want your yeast to have a nice, easy, relaxing life. And then they will create different flavors that you're interested in. So it's just experimentation. And if you want something that's, you know, dirty and funky, you might want a higher concentration of a dirty, funky molasses. So there's no right or wrong.
Interesting. Let's see. Jesse was asking, is there anything new in the works that we should have our eye on?
Yeah.
Should be looking out for.
Great question. So we're releasing our PX Dark Drum. This has been one of these projects that we've been working on for years and years, and then COVID hit, and you know, turns out that time make things better in spirits. So in this case, the extra time didn't hurt. So we got an extra 6 months on age here. So this is a really cool project because we get to nerd out on sherry. You know, for the bartenders out there, for the sherry nerds out there, we're really excited to introduce this product. So sherry casks you see lots of products that are aged in sherry casks. So to briefly describe what that means, so you notice a lot of things are sherry cask aged, but who's drinking the sherry from these sherry casks? Since not that many people drink sherry. Also, sherry is aged in the Solera method, meaning they constantly reuse their barrels. So where are all these sherry barrels coming from? So in reality, some sherry houses have become barrel houses. So they'll put really low quality sherry in the barrel, 6 weeks, whatever, and then ship it off to whomever at a really, really high inflated price. So you get a lot of these whiskeys that have cheap sherry influence in a very new Spanish oak cask. And so that flavor is not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily mature. So we took an expensive route, which is to buy, maybe Alvier PX sherry, very expensive, aged 4 years in this case, and we bought a drum of it, so 55 gallons, and we filled a barrel, let ex-bourbon barrel, I should say, and let nice, good sherry fill a barrel and season that barrel. And then we took the sherry out and seasoned another ex-bourbon cask. And then we took our 18-month New American Oak barrel rested rum and finished it in the properly PX sherry cask seasoned barrel. So it tastes really good when you drink it.
Yeah,
I'm really
so
excited
to
actually.
try this. Yeah, seriously, Phil and I have been chomping at the bit to get this into Boston.
I mean, I'm
So
already a huge fan of
briefly-
the sherry cask.
That's what I'm drinking right now.
Yeah.
But that's
So
the Navy
briefly
strain.
on age, because age in different spirit categories means a lot to different people, and many people associate big numbers with better flavor. And sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not. So a lot of American bourbons are aged 4 to 6 years, and that's considered sufficient. A lot of scotches are aged 12 to 18 years. Why the difference? So there's temperature and fluctuation reasons in the world of whiskey, but also there's distillation reasons in the case of rum. So whiskey is, or bourbon by definition can't be distilled to over 130. What is it, Nick?
For American whiskey?
For American whiskey, you can't distill bourbon to over 130, or is it 120?
You can't distill bourbon over 160.
160.
You can't fill it over 125.
Okay, so bourbon can't be distilled to over 180. We distill our rum to 180 to 185. So
rum can't be distilled to.
Sorry, I probably misspoke. You cannot legally. You can't distill American bourbon to over 160.
Yes.
Correct. Rum, there's no regulation. So we distill our rum to 180 to 185. So, and we make very clean cuts and remove all the methanol and all the tails. And so it's super clean coming out of the still. And so you don't have all these harsh, large molecules that need to be reintegrated. So for a whiskey, you sometimes actually want to leave a little bit of methanol in there because there's a lot of good ethanol that's kind of mixed in there, and the methanol will evaporate out over time. You want to put those big, heavy molecules from the tails in the barrel because over time, those will recombine and create really beautiful esters. And that's part of the art and beauty of whiskey. The way that we make our rum, it's beautiful right out of the still because we're very focused on our fermentations and our yeast and all these other variables. So there's not large molecule tails in our barrels, so they don't need years to break apart and recombine into new flavors. So the flavor of our barrel rested product comes from the raw rum, which is why it's so important that our white rum is so good. And then it's accentuated with the barrel influence. So it's considered an accent, not necessarily the core of the rum. So when we say 18 months, it's a logical response to that would be, oh, that's a young rum. It's probably not going to taste very good. My response to that is, as long as you're being intentional and you know why you're aging it for a certain amount of time, then it's acceptable. So for example, our mellow gold rum is intentionally only barrel rested for 3 to 6 months because that just so happens to be the time on the oxidation curve in the barrel where the coconut ester pops. And we really wanted in the rum for the coconut to pop. That might suck in a whiskey, but we don't make whiskey. So we intentionally only let it rest for 3 to 6 months. We're not being cheap about it. We're just being smart about it because we wanted to create a product that had this coconut forward ester.
To be clear, you don't make whiskey anymore. I believe rye whiskey was the second thing you ever made.
Sure. I've never legally made whiskey. How about that?
Fair enough. There we go. All right, Phil, we have time for one more. Do we have one more?
Well, I have one that I was.
Good.
I'm thinking this could actually be a good addition to the White Lightning round in the future, especially for distillers. But I would figure I'd ask you this because you might have a particularly interesting answer from a scientist perspective, having any sort of chemistry perspective or background. You might have an answer to this. If you couldn't use copper as a metal to make a still, but you had an infinite budget to use any metal to make a still, just couldn't use copper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you make it with?
Heavy metal.
I would make it with stainless steel. And the reason why you have copper is because it bonds with sulfur. So you're trying to remove the sulfur from the spirit. So you can remove a lot of the sulfur by having cleaner fermentations. Sulfur or having cleaner molasses, for example, in this case, and having a cleaner fermentation. So if you're starting with a very clean fermentation, you don't actually need that much copper contact. And stainless steel is durable and easy to clean. I'm a big fan of very, very, very clean stills. So after every run, we do a alkaline and acid wash to have a clean still. And then in order to remove the residual sulfurs, I would probably, I would run some experiments to determine what's more effective, either ceramic or charcoal. I know that's an easily Googleable thing that I could probably do right now, but one of those two would likely remove any residual sulfurs. But I make rum. If you asked a whiskey distiller, their answer would be much different because naturally there's going to be more sulfur in a bourbon or a scotch.
Yeah.
Especially because we're allowed to distill to 180 or 185. So the sulfur is a big enough compound that not as much sulfur makes it through.
Wow. Oh, wow. I'm highly impressed with that off the cuff answer. Do the answers get better the more you drink? Like, damn, that was really impressive.
I was expecting platinum or something.
I would make it with diamond crystals. And Reed, this was awesome. We've already dragged you out here for an extra 15 minutes because we couldn't get enough. But we got to wrap it up, and so the big thing. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. We're excited.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thank you guys so much.
This is really fun. Fuck, I got nothing else. Phil.
Yeah.
Cut the feed. No. Don't drink. Don't start drinking. Don't start drinking. Cut the feed.
Phil, we've talked about this, Phil.
No, we've talked about this.